will find out more and more to be a fact. Every other basis is a sort of sentimental confusion, full of merely verbal echoes of the older creeds. Those verbal associations are always vain, for the vital purposes of constraining the tyrant. An idealist may say to a capitalist, "Don't you sometimes feel in the rich twilight, when the lights twinkle from the distant hamlet in the hills, that all humanity is a holy family?" But it is equally possible for the capitalist to reply with brevity and decision, "No, I don't," and there is no more disputing about it further than about the beauty of a fading cloud. And the modern world of moods is a world of clouds, even if some of them are thunderclouds. For I have only taken here as a convenient working model the case of negro slavery, because it was long peculiar to America, and is popularly associated with it. It is more and more obvious that the line is no longer running between black and white, but between rich and poor. And I have already noted in the case of Prohibition the very same arguments of the inevitable suicide of the ignorant, of the impossibility of freedom for the unfit, which were once applied to barbarians brought from Africa, are now applied to citizens born in America. It is argued even by industrialists that industrialism has produced a class submerged below the status of emancipated mankind. They imply that the missing link is no longer missing even from England or the Northern States, and that the factories have manufactured their own monkeys. Scientific hypotheses about the feeble-minded and the criminal type will supply the masters of the modern world with more and more excuses for denying the dogma of equality in the case of white labour as well as black. And any man who knows the world knows perfectly well that to tell the millionaires or their servants that they are disappointing the sentiments of Thomas Jefferson, or disregarding a creed composed in the 18th century, will be about as effective as telling them that they are not observing the creed of St. Athanasius or keeping the rule of St. Benedict. The world cannot keep its own ideals. The secular order cannot make secure any one of its own noble and natural conceptions of secular perfection. That will be found, as time goes on, the ultimate argument for a church independent of the world and the secular order. What has become of all those ideal figures, from the wise man of the Stoics to the democratic deist of the 18th century? What has become of all that purely human hierarchy of chivalry, with its punctilious pattern of the good knight, its ardent ambition in the young squire? The very name of knight has come to represent the petty triumph of a profiteer, and the very word squire the petty tyranny of a landlord. What has become of all that golden liberality of the humanists, who found on the high tablelands of the culture of Hellas the very balance of repose and beauty that is most lacking in the modern world? The very Greek language that they loved has become a mere label for snuffy and snobbish dons, and a mere cockshy for cheap and half-educated utilitarians, who make it a symbol of superstition and reaction. We have lived to see a time when the heroic legend of the Republic and the Citizen, which seemed to Jefferson the eternal youth of the world, has begun to grow old in its turn. We cannot recover the earthly estate of knighthood, to which all the colours and complications of heraldry seemed as fresh and natural as flowers. We cannot re-enact the intellectual experiences of the humanists, for whom the Greek grammar was like the song of a bird in spring. The more the matter is considered, the clearer it will seem that these old experiences are now only alive, where they have found a lodgment in the Catholic tradition of Christendom, and made themselves friends for ever. St. Francis is the only surviving troubadour. St. Thomas More is the only surviving humanist. St. Louis is the only surviving knight. It would be the worst sort of insincerity, therefore, to conclude even so hazy an outline of so great and majestic a matter as the American democratic experiment, without testifying my belief that to this also the same ultimate test will come. So far as that democracy becomes or remains Catholic and Christian, that democracy will remain democratic. In so far as it does not, it will become wildly and wickedly undemocratic. Its rich will riot with a brutal indifference far beyond the feeble feudalism which retains some shadow of responsibility, or at least of patronage. Its wage slaves will either sink into heathen slavery, or seek relief in theories that are destructive not merely in method but in aim, since they are but the negations of the human appetites of property and personality. 18th century ideals, formulated in 18th century language, have no longer in themselves the power to hold all those pagan passions back. Even those documents dependent upon deism, their real strength will survive in men who are still deists; and the men who are still deists are more than deists. Men will more and more realise that there is no meaning in democracy if there is no meaning in anything; and that there is no meaning in anything if the universe has not a centre of significance and an authority that is the author of our rights. There is truth in every ancient fable; and there is here even something of it in the fancy that finds the symbol of the Republic in the bird that bore the bolts of Jove. Owls and bats may wander where they will in darkness; and for them, as for the sceptics, the universe may have no centre. Kites and vultures may linger as they like over carrion; and for them, as for the plutocrats, existence may have no origin and no end. But it was far back in the land of legends, where instincts find their true images, that the cry went forth that freedom is an eagle whose glory is gazing at the sun. The End of What I Saw in America, by G. K. Chesterton.